Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Scholar Gladiatorius. So I'm a big fan of Forged in Fire. I know it has its critics and I know it has its flaws. It's a TV programme, but it's great entertainment and I actually genuinely love it. I think I've watched every episode and some of them I've watched several times. So yeah, you know, I'm obsessed with swords and knives. Obviously, I'm going to end up watching a programme like that. Do some things in it kind of annoy me slightly? Yes, we're going to talk about one of those. Probably the thing that annoys me the most is they never really refer to tempering, or hardly ever refer to tempering. So they always, you see the quench and then the next thing is fitting the handles, and they never explain the fact that those blades are normally tempered. But anyway, well, pretty much always. So one thing that does bug me, and has been bugging me of late, is I think the way that when TV shows like this portray a given thing, people who just watch that show and don't necessarily have outside or background knowledge in the topic, take that piece of information and they think that that's the gospel truth. And that is the literal, that is it. That in that box, that is the piece of truth. Now, what am I talking about specifically? I'm talking about grip shape and grip size. So very often in the show, an opinion, a personal subjective opinion on the form of a grip is conveyed, which gives the impression to many viewers who don't necessarily know better that there is a right grip and there is a wrong grip, and that there is only one way to do something. And there is, you know, if that were true, then every knife and every sword from history and from the world now would look pretty much the same, wouldn't it? There would be only one type of Bowie knife, only one type of competition cutter, chopper, only one type of katana, only one type of rapier, whatever. And the fact is that different forms of hilt, first of all, are developed for different purposes and contexts. My famous and favourite word, of course. So a different type of grip is beneficial for certain ways of using a weapon. So I'll just pick one example, the Filipino Moro. So this is a very peculiar design, very particular design, very unusual design, and it is used in very specific ways. It should be pointed out, historically very often used with a shield. Modern Filipino martial arts tend not to do shield stuff. I think there's only a couple of places in Filipino in FMA teaching the use of a shield, but historically in the 19th century and up until the beginning of the 1900s, these were generally used with a shield, and very often these were a backup weapon to a spear. The spear was often the primary weapon, or a gun. These are very particular weapons, but as you can see from the hilt, we just ignore the blade because obviously the blade's pretty interesting by itself, but if we just look at the hilt, you can see it is a very peculiar and particular design. There are very unusual things about it. The sort of guard, as it were, the extended and toothed section comes up here, and there's nothing down below. There's no like knuckle bow or anything protecting that side. Okay, so a conventional sword, something like a saber, all of the guard is in front of the hand, but with this type, it's actually behind. In this case, there's nothing really to protect here, but obviously the way it's used means that protects the part of the arm and hand and wrist that is vulnerable. But the grip itself, there are several things about it which on paper would make it less than ideal. It's quite small. Well, it's the right size for the hand of the user, firstly. It's got this very hooked pommel, which means that you know, the hand is perhaps locked into position. It's less able to change into different types of grip. Sometimes, this one doesn't, but sometimes they actually have a projecting bit on this backside as well, which for many people digs into the palm of their hand, and they think that's inconvenient, but it's there for reasons. It evolved like that. And also, as well as being short, this grip is actually cylindrical, and very often on Forged in Fire, and other places on the internet as well, you see people criticise circular grips. I myself criticise circular grips, but this is where I must reiterate my earlier point. This is a subjective personal opinion. It's not fact that applies to good or bad, right or wrong, when we're applying to all swords and knives and edged weapons, or any type of weapon or tool even, from across history. Okay, there are lots of tools which have cylindrical grips, despite the fact that yes, on paper it seems to impede edge alignment. However, There might be reasons why there's a cylindrical grip. It might be because of the material that's been used. The material might be ivory or bamboo, which is cylindrical. If that's what's available in that place, that's what will be used. Certain types of axe have a cylindrical grip, and whilst I personally prefer tomahawks and axes to have a grip which enables me to index the edge more easily, so in other words an oval or an octagonal shaft, cylindrical gripped axes throughout history, whether it's from India or Native America, do exist. They do exist, and they were things that were used. And in that case, it's partly because the asymmetry of the weapon, the fact that your axe blade sticks out on one side, or hammer or whatever other weapon it might be, means that you can feel which direction the edge or the point or the blade is pointing in, because of that asymmetry. So it doesn't matter that the grip's cylindrical, so if you have a round piece of wood or bamboo or ivory or whatever, that's what you use. And here's an example, to grab another ethnographic example. This is a Burmese da with silver fittings, nice original antique example, elephant ivory grip. And there are things that they might say about this weapon, things that some people might say about this weapon. It is a one-handed weapon, again used predominantly with a shield in historical periods, unless that person was using a bow or a firearm, which meant they couldn't carry a shield for some reason. But in hand-to-hand combat, usually used with the shield. In some countries, famously, a pair of these were used, in Thailand for example, although that's possibly a later thing. Earlier it seems that they predominantly used these with a shield. The grip, cylindrical. I have mentioned this in previous videos. Why is it cylindrical? Well, there's many theories. It might just be because that's the materials they had available. They made them either of bamboo or ivory, and those are cylindrical materials. Yes, you could carve either of them, particularly ivory. You could carve it to be flatter so you can index the grip more easily, but maybe it just wasn't seen as necessary. Equally, the grip is quite long for a one-handed sword. Why is the grip so long? We could say this is of a medieval German Langmesser, for example, as well. Well, maybe it's for hooking, maybe it's for a bit better balance. The various theories, but the point is, someone could say, well, it's a one-handed weapon. Why is your grip so long? And this is something we see in Forged in Fire, and again, we see sometimes on internet discussions as well, where we say where something is right or wrong, when that's a subjective opinion and you don't necessarily know the full context of why is that grip longer. There might be reasons. If we put the da down for a second, we pick up this very utilitarian yataghan that is designed probably as some sort of bush tool, essentially, both a weapon and a machete, essentially. So it's everything from a camp knife to a bush clearing thing to an actual fighting weapon. And this has a particularly, machete-like constructed grip, you'll see here. But for me, that's particularly fat. And I personally find that grip a little bit too fat. I actually like quite a small grip. And notice that I'm just then instinctively, because I do saber fencing, I instinctively changed my grip to a saber grip there. And that's the other thing to mention. There's many, many different ways that you can grip tools and implements. And it's not that there's a right and a wrong, it's that you might grip in different ways at different moments for different purposes. And you might like to grip things like this, but with a particular tool. For example, with the Morrow Chris, you'll find that you don't want to grip it like that, because you can't. I mean, I can just about get a saber grip on there, but with this I'll be gripping between a hammer fist and something more like a handshake grip, because that's what the weapon tells me to do. Because presumably in the fighting styles of where this is from and this time and this place, that's how these were predominantly used, so that's how the grip evolved to fit the hands of the people who were using it in that particular fighting style. And to me, this yataghan feels the grip fit. Yeah, I mean, I can use it absolutely fine. I could chop wood with it. I could chop brush up with it. I could fight with it, and I can grip it in many different ways. It's quite a versatile grip, but it's not a long grip. It's quite confined. But for me, it's a bit fat. It's a bit on the fat side. And if I was making this, I'd make the grip a little bit thinner. And again, that's not about right or wrong. It's just about what I prefer. And lastly, we'll take this Tibetan little sword, short sword, with a very characteristic style hilt here. And we'll notice that this is almost rectangular. And I like that, because that means I exactly feel the edge alignment on it. And that's great. And in my videos, I often say, I love a flat, thin grip that helps me really feel the edge alignment. And yes, I like that. But it's very clear that some people didn't. Why might you like a big fat round grip? Well, it might be because this is more of a tool than a weapon. And if you're chopping wood all day, this kind of octagonal or rectangular or flat grip might dig into your hands and cause blisters. So it might be, yes, this feels great in my hand. I'm standing here on YouTube talking to you about weapons. I'm not out in the jungle chopping wood all day, thankfully. I'm in a garage in Surrey talking to you, holding a weapon for a few seconds in my hand going, oh, I much prefer the feel of this rectangular or octagonal grip. When actually, if I was out in the jungle all day, I might find, well, my poor old blistered, calloused hands much prefer a big, fat, rounded grip. So there we go, really just to say that don't ever be too black and white about how you categorize what's good or bad or better or worse about different weapon designs. All weapons designed to fulfill a purpose in their own time and place, and those people using those weapons knew far more about them than we do. So when you're watching a show like Forged in Fire next time, and they make criticisms about the grip's a bit too long, or the grip's a bit too square, or the grip's a bit too fat or a bit too thin, those are subjective comments, and that's fine, actually. This isn't a criticism of that. It's fine to make those subjective comments, but I do find it a bit harsh when people are judged on that and either go through or don't go through based on some of those things which I see as purely subjective. And you can't possibly know how Doug Marcaida or one of the other guys might like or dislike a certain type of grip, so long as it's not obviously offensive or obviously dangerous to their hand. But you know, some people prefer shorter grips, some people prefer longer grips. Couple of very similar weapons from almost the same time, two military sabres, both British, very similar in date, and you can see one has got a very much longer grip than the other. Is one wrong and is one right? No. They are different, very subtly slightly different swords for different people, different branches of the service, and different preferences as well. So there we go. All of these things evolved to suit different people at different times, different fighting styles, different cultures, to be used in different ways. And we have to take all of this as subjective and in a big worldview of understanding that, thankfully, all of these different preferences and different priorities and contexts led to the wonderful variety of weapons that we have from history and from the current day as well that we do now. Otherwise everything would look the same. Thanks for watching. Give us a like and a subscribe. I've got more videos on Patreon. Obviously I've got over 1,000 more videos on this channel, so if you haven't checked some of those out, go and have a look at some more of those now. I'll see you really soon for another video on Scholar Gladiatore channel. Cheers for watching and take care. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers folks.